July 22, 1943. George Patton stood in his command tent in Sicily, reading a report that made his jaw clench. Terry Allen's 1st Infantry Division had just disobeyed a direct order, again. Patton had ordered them to halt and consolidate their positions. Allen's men were 12 miles beyond the halt line, chasing retreating Germans through the mountains. Patton's chief of staff waited for the explosion. Everyone knew what happened when someone crossed George Patton. But Patton didn't explode. He crumpled the report and threw it in the trash. "Get me Bradley on the phone," he said. Omar Bradley arrived an hour later, expecting Patton to demand Allen's head. Instead, Patton said something that shocked Bradley to his core. "I can't fire him. He's the only division commander who understands how to kill Germans." Think about that admission. George Patton, the most feared general in the American Army, the man who slapped soldiers for cowardice, had just admitted he couldn't control one of his own commanders. But Bradley wasn't satisfied with that answer. He had been keeping a list of Allen's infractions: the bar fights in Tunis, the looted supply depots, the open insubordination. Bradley told Patton that Allen was making them all look weak. Patton looked at Bradley with barely concealed contempt and said, "He's making us look weak, or he's making you look weak." Bradley left that tent knowing that Patton had chosen sides, and it wasn't Bradley's side. But what Patton didn't know was that his protection of Terry Allen was about to trigger a crisis that would reach all the way to Eisenhower's headquarters, because Allen wasn't just breaking rules anymore. He was building a private army, and private armies don't answer to anyone. Terry Allen arrived at West Point in 1907 with military service in his blood. His father was an Army colonel. His grandfather had fought at Gettysburg. 4 generations of his family had worn the uniform. But Allen was different from the polished cadets around him. He had severe dyslexia that made reading agonizing. He compensated by memorizing everything, but academic work was a constant struggle. He failed out of West Point twice. Most men would have taken the hint. The Army didn't want them. Find another career, move on. Allen enrolled at Catholic University in Washington, completed ROTC, and entered the Army as a commissioned officer through the back door in 1912. The regular Army officers looked down on him. He wasn't one of them. He hadn't earned his commission the proper way. Allen didn't care. He was exactly where he wanted to be. World War I turned Terry Allen into a legend among enlisted men and a headache for his superiors. He commanded an infantry battalion at age 30. He led patrols personally into no man's land when regulations said battalion commanders should stay behind the lines. A machine gun bullet tore through his jaw during the Meuse-Argonne offensive. Most officers would have accepted the medical evacuation. Allen talked the doctors into sending him back to his unit before the wound fully healed. He showed up at the front line still bleeding. His men didn't know whether to be inspired or concerned. They settled on both. His superiors found him impossible. He drank too much. He ignored regulations he thought were stupid. He treated military ceremony as a waste of time that could be spent training. But he won. Every engagement his battalion fought ended in American victory. After the armistice, Allen returned to the peacetime Army. He bounced between cavalry posts, got into trouble, got out of trouble, and built a reputation as the officer you wanted in a fight and nowhere else. By 1940, Lieutenant Colonel Terry Allen was being chewed out by his regimental commander and facing possible court-martial for yet another incident. Then a telegram arrived. Allen had been promoted to brigadier general, skipping the permanent rank of colonel entirely. George Marshall had personally intervened. The Army Chief of Staff was rebuilding the military for the war he knew was coming. He needed combat leaders, not parade ground officers. Marshall wrote that Allen was outstanding as a leader who could do anything with men and officers, though unprepossessing in appearance and apparently casual in manner. In May 1942, Marshall gave Allen command of the 1st Infantry Division, the Big Red One. It was one of the most coveted assignments in the Army. Allen was about to meet the man who would try to control him and fail. George Patton was everything the Army wanted a general to be. West Point graduate, wealthy family, Olympic athlete. He looked like he had been cast in a Hollywood movie about military greatness. He demanded absolute obedience. His soldiers feared him more than they feared the Germans. Patton believed that discipline and aggression won wars. Half of that assessment was correct.
When Patton took command of the Western Task Force for the invasion of North Africa in 1942, he inherited Terry Allen's 1st Division. What he saw intrigued him. Allen's men didn't look like soldiers. Their uniforms were wrinkled. They wore unauthorized gear. They walked with the casual slouch of dock workers, not the crisp bearing of infantry. But they moved with a confidence that caught Patton's attention. These men weren't afraid of anything. Patton called Allen to his headquarters for their first meeting. He expected Allen to straighten up, spit shine his boots, and show some respect for rank. Allen showed up in a dirty uniform with his collar unbuttoned. Patton started to dress him down. Then Allen interrupted him. "General, are we here to fight Germans or impress inspection officers?" Patton's aide later said the silence that followed lasted an eternity. Then Patton laughed. "Get out of my office, Allen, and take Casablanca." Allen took Casablanca. Then he took Oran. Then his division stopped Rommel's counterattack at Kasserine Pass when every other American unit was running. Patton watched Allen's victories pile up and made a calculation. He could break Allen and turn the 1st Division into a conventional unit, or he could unleash Allen and watch him tear through the Africa Corps like a chainsaw. Patton chose the chainsaw, but there was a price for that choice. Allen's men started acting like they owned North Africa. They raided supply depots that belonged to other divisions. They got into massive brawls with British troops in Tunis. One night, Allen's soldiers beat up an entire platoon of Patton's own military police after the MPs tried to arrest them for looting. The MPs filed a formal complaint with Patton's headquarters. Patton threw it in the trash. Omar Bradley was watching all of this with growing alarm. Bradley was Patton's deputy commander for 2nd Corps. He believed that discipline was the foundation of an effective army. When he saw Patton protecting Allen, he started documenting every infraction. Bradley kept a notebook: the bar fight in Matur, the wine warehouse in Bizerte, the fist fight between Allen's troops and the 45th Division. Bradley took his notebook to Patton and demanded action. Patton looked at the list and said something that Bradley would never forget. "Bradley, you're keeping score like this is a goddamn tennis match. Allen is winning a war." Bradley tried to argue that Allen's behavior was undermining coalition unity. Patton cut him off. "The British respect one thing: winning. Allen wins. Now get out of my tent." That conversation marked the beginning of Bradley's campaign to destroy Terry Allen. He just needed Patton out of the way. Here's what Bradley didn't write about in his notebooks. While Allen's men were brawling in rear-area towns, they were also perfecting a form of warfare that would change the course of the Italian campaign: night attacks. During the day, German artillery and machine guns turned every advance into a bloodbath. But at night, the equation changed. German gunners couldn't hit what they couldn't see. American infantry could close the distance before defenders knew they were coming. Allen trained his division to fight in complete darkness, not the standard 8 to 12 hours per week the Army required, more like 30 to 35 hours. His men practiced moving without flashlights. They learned to navigate by compass and stars. They rehearsed attacks until they could execute them without speaking. Patton watched one of these night drills and was mesmerized. He told his staff, "That son of a bitch has invented something new." In July 1943, the Allies invaded Sicily. Patton commanded the American 7th Army. Bernard Montgomery commanded the British 8th Army, and Patton specifically requested Terry Allen's 1st Division for the most difficult landing at Gela. He knew Allen's men could handle it. What he didn't know was that Allen was about to embarrass him in front of the entire Allied command. The 1st Division landed on July 10th. Within hours, German panzers from the Hermann Göring Division counterattacked with 90 tanks, trying to push the Americans back into the sea. Allen's division stopped them cold. But then Allen did something that made Patton's blood boil. Instead of consolidating the beachhead as ordered, Allen pushed inland hard. His troops advanced so fast that they left the flanking divisions behind, creating a dangerous salient that exposed them to German counterattack from 3 sides. Patton drove to the front to personally order Allen to pull back. He found Allen standing on a ridge watching his battalions disappear into the interior. "What the hell are you doing, Allen? I ordered you to hold the beach." Allen didn't even turn around. "General, are we here to fight Germans or spit shine our boots?" Patton grabbed Allen's shoulder and spun him around. "I gave you a direct order." Allen looked Patton in the eye and said, "Then you can relieve me, but my men are staying on those Germans." Patton had two choices: fire Allen on the spot and prove to everyone that he couldn't control his own commanders, or let Allen keep going and hope he was right. Patton chose option 2. He told Allen, "If you lose one battalion to a counterattack, I will personally court-martial you." Allen smiled. "I won't lose a battalion, sir." Then he walked away before Patton could respond. Think about the audacity of that moment. A division commander tells a field army commander to go to hell, then walks away like it's settled.
Allen was right. The Germans never counterattacked. The 1st Division cracked the entire German defensive line and allowed Patton's army to race Montgomery to Messina. It was a brilliant tactical gambit. It was also blatant insubordination, and Omar Bradley was taking notes. Patton tried to smooth things over with Eisenhower. He wrote that Allen was the finest combat leader he had ever seen, but admitted he was completely uncontrollable. Eisenhower read that report and made a decision that would haunt Patton. Ike called Bradley and told him to start looking for a replacement for Allen. Patton found out about the order and exploded. He drove to Bradley's headquarters and told him that firing Allen would be the stupidest personnel decision of the war. Bradley looked at Patton with cold satisfaction and said, "It's already done." Allen was being relieved in 48 hours. Patton went over Bradley's head directly to Eisenhower. He argued that Allen had saved the Sicilian invasion. He pointed out that Allen's division had the highest combat effectiveness rating in the entire theater. He even threatened to resign if Allen was fired. Eisenhower listened patiently, then said something that ended the argument. "George, you've been protecting Allen for 8 months. In that time, his division has become a gang, not a military unit. If we take them to France like this, they'll be a liability." Patton knew Eisenhower was right. He had created this problem by refusing to discipline Allen. Now someone else was going to pay the price. On August 7, 1943, Omar Bradley called Terry Allen to 2nd Corps headquarters. The conversation was brief. Allen was relieved of command of the 1st Infantry Division. So was his assistant division commander, Brigadier General Theodore Roosevelt, Jr. The official reason was discipline problems. The real reason was that Patton had lost his battle to protect them. Patton didn't attend the change of command ceremony. He couldn't watch it. He sent his chief of staff with a private message for Allen. "Tell Terry I fought like hell for him. Tell him I'm sorry." Allen received the message on a transport ship heading back to the United States. He crumpled it up and threw it over the side. As far as Allen was concerned, Patton's apology came about 6 months too late. But what neither Patton nor Allen knew was that George Marshall had been watching the entire drama unfold, and Marshall had very different ideas about what Terry Allen deserved. October 15, 1943. Terry Allen stood before a formation of soldiers at Camp Adair, Oregon. These weren't the battle-hardened veterans of the Big Red One. These were draftees and recent enlistees who had never heard a shot fired in anger. The 104th Infantry Division, nicknamed the Timberwolves. George Marshall had intervened again. Just 2 months after Bradley declared Allen unfit to command, Marshall gave him a 2nd division. 2 months. Bradley fires the guy, and Marshall hands him another division before Patton even finishes writing his letter of apology. Marshall's message was clear. He didn't care what Patton thought. He didn't care what Bradley wanted. He needed combat leaders, not politicians. And Terry Allen was about to prove that Marshall's judgment was better than all of theirs combined. Allen looked at the raw troops in front of him and saw potential. He would build this division from nothing. He would train them in the tactics that had terrified Germans in North Africa and Sicily, and he would create something that would make Patton regret not fighting harder to keep him. The training began that afternoon. Allen transformed the 104th Division into something the Army had never seen. He immediately reinstated the brutal training regimen he had perfected with the 1st Division. While standard divisions trained for daylight operations, the Timberwolves lived in the dark. They learned to move without flashlights. They practiced hand signals that worked when voices would give away positions. They rehearsed attacks until every soldier knew exactly where to be without being told. Allen was ruthless about it. He drove his men to the breaking point. But this time, it wasn't just about winning battles, it was personal. Every successful night drill was a silent rebuke to Patton and Bradley. Every soldier who mastered darkness was proof that Allen's methods worked. He was forging the Timberwolves into a weapon that would make his former protector look like an amateur. The Timberwolves adopted a motto: "Nothing in hell must stop the Timberwolves." By August 4, 1944, they were ready. Allen loaded his division onto transport ships bound for France. He was going back to war, and nobody would be able to stop him. The 104th Division entered combat on October 23, 1944, in the Netherlands. Allen attacked at night. His Timberwolves advanced 15 miles in 5 days through flooded polders that had stalled other divisions for weeks. Montgomery himself sent congratulations. Then they hit the Siegfried Line. Concrete pillboxes, dragon's teeth, interlocking fields of fire. Other divisions had bled themselves white attacking these defenses in daylight. Allen's men attacked at night, again and again. Stolberg fell, then Eschweiler, then Inden, town after town captured in darkness, while German defenders struggled to organize resistance against enemies they couldn't see. They smashed across the Ruhr River in a brutal night assault that Patton's Third Army had been unable to execute in daylight. And finally, they reached Cologne. The Germans started calling the 104th the Night Fighters. Prisoners told interrogators that fighting them was unfair. The Americans didn't follow the rules. They attacked when you couldn't see them coming. The normal tactics didn't work. Here's what those German prisoners didn't know. Terry Allen had invented those tactics in North Africa while Patton was protecting him from Bradley. Patton had watched Allen perfect them in Sicily while refusing to fire him. And now Allen was using them to accomplish objectives that Patton's own divisions couldn't take. Think about that irony. The general Patton couldn't control had become more effective than the generals Patton could control. By April 1945, Allen's division had crossed the Rhine and was racing toward the Elbe. They had fought for 195 consecutive days. They had never yielded ground to a counterattack. They had never failed to take an objective. The division that had been handed to Terry Allen as a consolation prize had become one of the most feared fighting units in the European theater. George Patton read the after-action reports and realized what he had lost. Not just a division commander, a tactical innovator who had changed how the Army thought at night. Patton wrote a letter to Marshall in March 1945. He never sent it. In the letter, Patton admitted that relieving Allen had been a mistake. He wrote that Allen's unorthodox methods were not a problem to be solved, but a weapon to be exploited. He acknowledged that his failure to protect Allen from Bradley had cost the Army 6 months of Allen's combat leadership. The letter sat in Patton's desk until his death. He never had the courage to admit the mistake publicly. Omar Bradley never admitted he was wrong about Terry Allen. In his memoirs, he defended the firing as necessary for unit cohesion. But Bradley's own staff officers told a different story. They said Bradley had been jealous of Allen's combat reputation and had used discipline as an excuse to eliminate a rival. Whether that's true doesn't matter. What matters is the result. The general Bradley fired went on to build the most effective night fighting unit in the war. German prisoners consistently rated the 104th among the American divisions they least wanted to face. British commanders studied Allen's night attack tactics and adopted them for their own units. Even the Red Army sent observers to document Allen's methods after the link-up at the Elbe. The troublemaker who failed out of West Point twice had just taught the entire Allied coalition how to fight in darkness. Nearly 5,000 Timberwolves were casualties, over 1,000 killed in action. Allen wrote hundreds of letters to the families of men who died under his command, each one personal, each one acknowledging the specific sacrifice. In one letter to a mother in Ohio, Allen wrote, "Your son died proving that unconventional warfare wins conventional battles. George Patton never understood that. Omar Bradley never accepted it, but your son lived it." That mother kept the letter for the rest of her life. When historians interviewed her in 1967, she said Allen's letter meant more than the medals the Army sent, because Allen told her the truth. Her son had died proving his commander right and his commander's superiors wrong. George Marshall's judgment had been vindicated. The general who appeared on Time magazine's cover 2 days after being fired had just led his 2nd Division to victory. The officer Patton couldn't control had proven that control was overrated when the alternative was effectiveness. Patton had wanted a subordinate who followed orders. Marshall gave Allen the freedom to win wars his own way. And Allen had proven that sometimes the most dangerous commanders are dangerous precisely because nobody can control them. Patton died in December 1945 from injuries sustained in a car accident. He never publicly admitted his mistake about Terry Allen. But his chief of staff later revealed that Patton had told him privately, "I should have threatened to resign and meant it. Bradley wanted Allen gone for all the wrong reasons. I knew that, and I didn't fight hard enough to stop it." That admission never made it into the official histories. It stayed buried in private papers until decades after both men were dead. Terry Allen retired from the Army in 1946. He never wrote a memoir. He never gave interviews about his conflicts with Patton or Bradley. When reporters asked him about being fired in Sicily, Allen only said, "They made their decision, I made mine. The war decided who was right." That quote is carved on his headstone at Arlington National Cemetery, right next to the words, "Night Fighter." Patton had said Allen was uncontrollable. He was right. But what Patton never understood was that Allen didn't need to be controlled. He needed to be unleashed. And when George Marshall finally did unleash him, Terry Allen proved that the most dangerous division commanders are the ones who refuse to fight the way everyone expects. Patton couldn't control America's most dangerous division commander, but in the end, he didn't need to.